do you take something old, something new, and combine them both to invent the future? When we think mobility, apps, innovators in personal, local transport, and ride-hailing, well, you might think Lyft, you might think Uber, especially if you happen to live in North America. Not so much in Europe. In Europe, there's another competitor that offers almost 200,000 vehicles, serves 14 million passengers, and is available in over 100 cities. And it's a collaboration by two of the oldest car companies literally on the planet, which also pledges to be 100% pollution-free by 2030. Welcome to Clever Tap Engage. My name is John Kutzier.
And my name is Peggy Ann Saltz, and together we profile executives and companies achieving meaningful, memorable, and clever customer engagement. In this episode, we're chatting with a CMO, as you said, John, in the ride-hailing space, an app vertical that is seeing massive volume post-pandemic as trip volumes rebound, and it's also seeing greater demand than ever for friction-free experiences that offer consumers convenience. This company braved global events to acquire new brands and pursue its own rebrand in the same process, and it's well on its way to becoming Europe's largest e-hailing app. As you said, a mobility venture between two car makers, mainly BMW and Daimler, and it has also expanded into other areas, so scooters, electric vehicles, mopeds. Our guest is Thomas Zimmermann. He, as I said, the CEO. He was the CMO of FreeNow, so he's moved up. And before that, he's held several senior marketing positions, including CMO at Good Game Studios. Welcome. Great to have you, Thomas.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
I want to get into it from this angle here, in which you're building something entirely new, right? You're competing with companies that are 5 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, that sort of thing. But you're coming out of companies that are over 100 years old. How are you balancing that challenge?
The company originally, FreeNow, was founded, I think now 11 or 12 years back as One Touch Taxi. So disrupting the classical taxi dispatching in Europe, doing that through an app at that point in time, like really something new. Not so much anymore today. So then over the course of time, the company got first acquired 100% by Mercedes, and then later on there's now this joint venture between Mercedes and BMW, joining their mobility forces, right? And I think for us it's not so different, I think, than dealing with traditional VCs or private equity firms, right? So because we are not directly embedded into these companies, we are still our own company, and our board happens to be consistent to two of the largest OEMs when it comes to car manufacturing in the world. So that definitely gives things a spin, right? And how they look at mobility and how they look at the evolvement of mobility, also what does it do to their own business, and why it might be very interesting to have a foot in the door on the new mobility stuff that is going to change how actually cities will operate in the future. On the day-to-day, it's not influencing as much, but in the greater scheme of things, it's obviously also from a perspective of stability quite interesting to have shareholders like that.
I was doing some reading, Thomas. I mean, talk about volume uplift. I've seen in some cities 6x volume, so that is quite a change. What have you seen as a company, and what have you done to achieve the most significant uplift so far?
At the moment, we're seeing 100% year-over-year growth, but also the last years have been flawed a bit in terms of Corona and a quite suppressed mobility market. But if you look at the more recent additions to our platform, so all the new mobility types, e-mopeds, e-scooters, e-bikes, but also car sharing, right? So this on the one hand coming from a smaller base, but it's getting really, really good traction. So users adopting that. So we sometimes even see much more than 6x growth because it's basically building up, right? And people are using that, want to use that, really like the offering. And then also there's some type of seasonality, right? Whether it be explaining and building the brand from a ride-hailing company to a true multi-mobility company. And then obviously we also do incentivize users to try out the service, because we truly think it makes sense to explain it, but you really feel the benefit once using it and opening your app and really seeing, okay, the next scooter is there, right? kind of regardless on which provider, because we've integrated all the big providers. So you basically see, okay, the next scooter is there, the next car sharing is there. I don't need to flip through 5 apps to find the nearest scooter or the nearest car. And that's good talking about it, but I think that customer value proposition you really feel when you try it, compared to how you have done it before. I've done it myself, like flipping through car sharing. Okay, there's the next car. Oh no, there was one close. Oh no, now it's gone, right? So that's kind of annoying.
And then you walk 10 blocks over there to get a scooter, and that one's gone when you show up. Or you walk a couple blocks farther, and then you give up, and then you just take a bus.
Exactly. So, and that all is basically fueling the growth, so platform expansion, but also a bit suppressed market in the past. And now it's getting traction again, which is really nice to see.
I mean, those volumes are impressive, but you're not the only one out there. I was also just recently in Berlin, and I noticed a couple new kids on the block. We have Uber in Europe as well. Well, there's Bolt, there's Lyft, there's others. How do you differentiate from others in the space?
I think one of the core differentiators is that we are not putting our own assets on the street. We tried that. We built up a scooter company in the past. Hive had our fair share of tryout. Learned that we are not an asset provider, right? You need to excel at supply chain management, at logistics, at maintenance. That's not us, right? We are a platform, and therefore we started integrating other providers, right? So, and if you look now at our platform, and that is the main part of the differentiation at the moment, there is no other provider in Europe that offers the same broad spectrum of mobility, right? So that means we have all the big players in there. It's Tier, Voi, Dot, Miles, ShareNow, Sixt, you name it, right? So it's all in there. And this is two components, right? So on the one hand, we offer much more, and it's always the next closest option because we have that huge supply. And even if some of the single providers ramps up their fleet massively, even if they have the largest scooter fleet in the city, if we are integrating number 2 and 3, we have automatically more supply, right? So the density of supply is definitely one differentiator, and with over, I think, 170,000 vehicles in Europe available to our customers at the moment, so nobody is close to that at the moment. And then the second thing, and this goes a bit more into how do we also, with our purpose, changing basically the future of cities and how we live in these cities. By that, we don't inject any new assets into the market. If a new player comes in and wants to ramp up their portfolio, they need to inject new assets, right? So, and then, yeah, in the long run might play out, but for the time being, I would say in a lot of cities, there are enough assets. It's the same as with private cars. There are enough cars, right? It's more about the utilization, how much stand time do they have, and so on. So what we are doing, we're not adding any assets. We are utilizing what there is on the market and making it just more accessible to our user base.
I want to turn a little bit to marketing, performance marketing as well. You come from a gaming studio. It feels like, Peggy, we're asking this question almost every couple of weeks now, where gaming studio execs, marketing execs are getting poached, and they're coming over to more traditional businesses or different businesses, different verticals. How is performance marketing different for you now?
It's not like in 2014. Performance marketing was basically eating a lot into the classical marketing budget, right? So it was right at the peak of performance marketing, everything trackable, huge volumes, high CLVs, good return. Like, it was like close to perfect, I would say.
IDFAs for everybody.
Right, so therefore, I think from a time component, a lot of things changed, right? In performance marketing, which is digital marketing, there are more advertisers in there, and also the classical ones. So FMCG spend on digital platforms has increased and so on. So it has become more expensive. That's the one thing. And I think the second thing is, most likely everybody who's in your audience knows that tracking has changed quite a lot. So, and then we are above the peak of like just performance marketing is everything. So, and while that, I think, healthy understanding, then it needs to be tied together also with classical marketing activities, brand activities, then the tracking side, which brings it even closer to these activities, brings us to a point where I'd say it is more a combination of things, and you need to look at it holistically. So, for example, we are at the moment implementing, which is rather old school, but we are looking into marketing mix modeling, because digital alone is not as trackable as it used to be, and there are also other big portions of spend, and we somehow need to bring that into balance. So we revert back to something that has been upgraded over the course of the years, luckily, but it's rather a classical approach. And then compared to gaming, I would say the biggest difference is it's a more indirect product to a certain extent. So meaning like with the game you register and then you play. But do I get you with the performance marketing ad when you really need a cap? Because you also need to go through the registration process. So there is a bit of a delay between the attention and then the desire and then the actual usage, right? So I think that is something different also in terms of how to monitor what's the best first post or install KPI, for example, right? To really measure if you're a successful customer. That differs a bit. And then it's a marketplace business. Gaming is not a marketplace business. And while gaming was crazy and there was a lot of countries and crazy scale and the whole in-game economics, oh boy, the marketplace business is something else.
That is a great explanation of what's changed. Peggy, I smell another book there, Post-Peak Performance Marketing. I mean, that sounds like an interesting book to write and an interesting topic to dive into. You are using new techniques, old techniques in some cases, updated for modern times as well, but you're also doing some influencer marketing. You're using WhatsApp for messaging. What are some of the new things that you're doing that are working for you?
It's all things and new things, trying around, right? What role does text messaging play? For example, that's very efficient for driver marketing or for communication with existing drivers. Then on both sides of the marketplace, newer messages like WhatsApp do play a role. It's always like a bit, you need to see what is the right communication channel for the audience. We don't want to communicate to the user in any way where it feels intrusive or where they are then annoyed by that, right? It's more an evolution also of existing things, right? So you can say, I don't know, TikTok or Snapchat is something new. For me, it's not. It's a new platform in the ecosystem. It's like a new publisher that has been there before. Mechanics are differently, but essentially it just is not a complete new form of advertising. So, but it comes with challenges and differences and also upsides. So you need to really look into what's working on that platform, as with any other platform, and then try out for that A/B test and try to make it work. I think for a pure mobile first company like ours, it was really interesting when we first did TV or radio or something like that, which is not new marketing stuff, but for a tech company, when you do that the first time after years of business, that is kind of new.
So you've done old, new. We're hearing about media mix, also making certain the messaging channels match the consumer. But if you step back and you say, okay, segment the customers, because you need to make certain the messaging matches their preferences. You're coming from mobile gaming. Is it easier or harder than segmentation there?
I think it's harder because it's more heterogeneous, right? Because if you look at mobile gaming, everything that is in regards to your segmentation, how you address the user, what you learn about the user is in the gaming ecosystem, right? So, and it's not really relevant what you're doing outside of it. Yes, for user personas and so on. But if you're at the airport playing the game, at home, at your couch playing the game, doesn't really matter if it's raining, if it's weekday, weekend. All of that doesn't, it matters how you behave in the game. What's your pattern within the game? And then you look at your engagement metrics against that. If you look at a service like ours, where we are just a convenience touch point to get from A to B, right? So we are not like in a game, it's entertainment, and you're trying like to kill some time, switch off or something. Our touch point is when you're in need to get from A to B, and then our touch point is gone. So for us, it's really important. What day is it? What time of the day? Why are you using the app? How is the weather outside? How is your behavior generally in mobility? What kind of services do you use? And then combine all of that. So it gets pretty multi-dimensional, but not within the app so much. We need to try to incorporate and learn about our customers in which situations they are when they open the app.
So you're looking for users at that moment of inspiration, that moment when they need your convenience. What does an engaged user look like to you? What have they done? What are the metrics? What are the events that define them?
Frequency of usage is definitely something. And then also kind of trips. If somebody only takes airport trips every 3 months, okay, then maybe go on vacation every 3 months and use this every 3 months. So it's a bit of type of usage for things are using it, frequency. And then increasingly more important is there cross usage, right? Are you only ride hailing or only scooter, right? Especially for older customers, like in terms of tenure with us, some of them are only ride hailing. That's where we're coming from. But then we see that actually users that use multiple types of transportation with us and switch back and forth and use all of them have a higher frequency, have more tours per active user, and have a much higher CLV. So obviously for us, it's really important to basically expose them and tell them about what there's new in the app and what you can now do with the app. Because if that resonates with them, that are actually for us the most valuable users as well in the end.
I want to talk a little bit about your app, and you've already talked about personalizing user experiences, understanding users and who they are, where they go, when they use a service, what they use, those sorts of things. You offer so many different types of mobility. You mentioned it: car sharing, ride hailing, mopeds, scooters. Sounds like a lot of fun. I want to use one of those. Maybe in Southern Europe, in the nicer, sunnier, warmer places in Spain or something like that. How do you communicate that in your app and provide a personal experience to somebody who, wants to get from A to B?
It's not only in the app, right? So there's first the whole outside of the app advertising where we're explaining the service and so on. But then I would say in the app and extended to that all CRM measures, right? So push notification, emails, not directly in the app, but it's somehow you're an active user, let's say active user communication. We really try to segment in a way where we give users helpful and relevant information, not trying to get on their nerves too much, right? So, and this is not necessarily volume, right? I'm not annoyed by something if I get a high volume and it's all relevant or it's all interesting, right? So this is not annoying, that's okay, right? I'm getting annoyed if it's like irrelevant and then it comes often. And if it only comes once a month and it's irrelevant, you might not notice so much, but still might be irrelevant. So for us, we are really trying to look into, okay, how is the usage? What can we make out of it, right? If you have oftentimes used scooters, we might send you a reminder if you suddenly stopped, right? So, but if you just have taken, 10 taxi trips, we would not necessarily send you a voucher to take your next taxi trip, right? So because this doesn't really make sense. So we're trying to put it a bit into usage, and also trying then you have points of interest like airport, for example, right? So it's basically when you're at the airport, opening up the app, then you get walking directions, right? So to your pickup, specifically to that location. We can only do that once you open the app because we can't do geofencing when it's off, because otherwise we would be tracking you all the time, which is maybe not something you would like and definitely is not allowed. But so it's a bit of what can we learn about you in that very moment of time. When you're in the app, it's a bit more. So then we can tailor specific messages or reminders. Or for example, when you're in a cab ride to somewhere, we know, because you are in that ride with us, your estimated time of arrival. So shortly before you arrive, you will get a push notification so that you don't leave your bag or your phone or something in the car, right? To directly avoid any negative experience where then you have to call customer care or the driver and they need to come back. And if you lose your phone, that also is tricky to do that then, right? So to do something like that, this is basically based on that. Then we're also playing around with weather data a bit. So we've seen really good results when there's good weather, to be more active in communications around scooters, bikes, mopeds and stuff like that, to remind people that it's nice out there and they can use these services with us as well. And there's something like aspirational, where we want to learn enough about John, in that case, about your past mobility behavior, that we, in the morning when you use us for commute on Monday, we provide you different mobility options than on the weekend, where you go to dinner or something like that. So basically giving you a personalized recommendation, what is the best use, maybe also on the distance that you need to take, the weather, how it is at the moment, even if it's maybe a short trip, but if it's raining, cats and dogs might be different. So that is stuff we're also looking into, but this is kind of a bit like this really personalized for you tab in the beginning of the app is at the moment still aspirational.
I really like that. Hey, it's nice weather today. Why not take the scooter? It's going to suck today. You know what? Take the cab.
And it's personalized. These are personalized recommendations, but they're tacit. They're not going to get sort of the strange, creepy feeling. This is going to be the convenient feeling. So that is a very smart move indeed. I guess that's to increase recency, frequency. Is it also to move the customers from one segment to another? Are you looking at that and saying, okay, I want to create that incentive that they use it more and go from one segment to another?
It's also about cross mobility usage, right? So if you have only used ride-hailing in the past, we try to motivate you also with incentives to try out new types because we think it's beneficial. If you don't react to that like 3 times, 5 times, we will also stop bothering you. Obviously, not everybody needs all mobility types, but as I said, we see basically the users that use us across mobility types have the highest return rate, have the highest CLV. So therefore, for us, this is basically the goal, to have as many of our users as cross-type users and not single-type users.
Nice.
So bigger buy-in, greater loyalty. Well, that is an impressive approach. You've also had an impressive track record as a CMO at FreeNow, but also CMO at Good Game Studios. We discussed that. What skills, experiences, traits have helped you take FreeNow to where it is today?
I mean, it's not only on my shoulders, right? So it's with every company.
That's so German.
It's a great team.
I'm sorry, Thomas. I have to say that every time with a European interview, it's not me, it's the team. But you did bring.
It is a team. It is a team.
It is
The biggest task of every leadership person is to build a high-performing team and remove roadblocks for them, right? I truly believe that. So it is a team, and I think. But what helped me to build that team and to remove these roadblocks is, I think, I've always worked in tech companies, right? So, and yes, you learn something on the way, but I think it helps that tech in itself is not a, black box for me, right? I would never say that I can code. My CTO always calls me a script kiddie. But it's literally that, right? I'm coming from SEO and affiliate marketing on desktop, right? So you naturally play around with Python code, with PHP and so on. So I think I have a certain access to generally how engineers work and think. And then I have always been pretty heavy on the data side, and then again with data science. So I have a really good understanding of what the core of our organization is doing, right? And even in the previous role as CMO, it helps a lot if you're close enough to the data topics, because actually that fuels a lot of things. And then you can also ask the right questions. You do understand what works and what did not work, or what cannot work, and also what you might be able to build, right? So having a certain affinity to data and tech in marketing nowadays is something really, really important. So I think that plays a big role.
I think that is super important, and I think also super important in making a transition from CMO to CEO is that mindset that you're building a team. You're building a team of the best possible people. You're removing those roadblocks from them, and then you're expecting the team to perform. So that makes a ton of sense. Maybe let's end here and ask what's next for FreeNow. Like, you've built a pretty impressive platform. You've got some good stats, some good numbers, some good growth. That's great. You're in Europe. Are you going to expand beyond there? Are you going to expand within Europe? What do you see as the next step?
So we are not going to expand beyond Europe in the foreseeable future, because the market potential and the problems to solve are still really big here, and we really want to focus on Europe. And every other region in the world comes with different challenges. And I think Europe is, diverse enough, right? But beside that, I would say we are still adding new partners, so we are building out the multi-mobility platform further. So this is still ongoing, right? And then we talked a lot about B2C. This is also the biggest volume. But on the back of that, we have a really strong enterprise business. We had that already with ride-hailing, offering business accounts where you can administrate different things. It's easier on the accounting side and so on. This is also expanded by now the new types of mobility. And then again, we're building up on our B2C business, another enterprise business, which is mobility budget, which is, in the end, it's employee benefits, right? So where your employer can say, okay, instead of giving you a car, you get 500 euros, 1,000 euros mobility budget per month in our app, and you can use it across all mobility types. You can track it. It's a nice visual, how much you have left, how much you spent on which mobility type, and so on. And that actually builds then again the enterprise counterpart to what we are doing on the B2C side. So I would say this is this year, next year, and then obviously growing on these verticals. And then we will see what's next, because you mentioned we are a platform, and for us, I think what we are constantly thinking about is how can we leverage our platform best, and how can we build upon the services that we already have that are maybe not so easy to build from scratch for a pure player, or do something different because you don't have the user base or the volume or the tech team or whatever. So, and there are multiple options, right? Some of them we are already seeing, and also with some of the competitors, could be rapid delivery, food delivery, could go more into other segments of travel. So we are not fully decided on what to do best, because currently we are focusing on execution on the core. But definitely, if we are going to expand our services, it's something where we can leverage our platform, our user base.
Well, I'm a little sad to hear that you're not expanding to North America, because it sounds like a very cool platform, and I'm looking forward to using it at some point. Well, I'll just have to travel to Europe, clearly, but it is a really neat platform, and it's also a really neat business idea and niche that you're occupying, because it kind of rather than occupying every niche, verticalizing everything, you're taking a piece. And there's pieces for other local players who can do the job better in local places that have different geography, weather, whatever, regulation. That makes a ton of sense. Thomas, thank you so much for taking this time with us. It has been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And Thomas, I have to thank you also for a little peek under the lid, because in the platform, John, now think about the power of recommendations. And if you can personalize them. So it's cross-sell, it's upsell, it's something bigger than the sum of the parts. So thanks again.
And for our audience, if you've been watching the video, hey, we also publish this in an audio podcast, which is easy to consume on the go, on the train, in the plane, wherever you are. And if you happen to be on the audio version, you know what? You can see us, which is amazing, incredible for some of you, I guess. Search for us on YouTube to chill, watch us whenever you want.
This podcast is about finding the world's best marketers and getting their top tips. And we focus on major brands with big stories to tell. So if you fit the bill, DM John or me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and we'll set you up with a show of your own. Until then, this is Peggy Ann Saltz.
And this is John Coetzee for Clever Tap Engage.